So why not discrete trials? A typical behavioral program allows often for a minimum of 10 trials when you're teaching a certain skill or lesson with repetitive instructions, with the idea behind that learning through repetition. So our thoughts on this: ABA therapists or applied behavior analysis therapists mainly teach through repetition. For us, that is something that we have experience in. We know how that works. We were trained as behavioral therapists many years ago now. So we also understand how these lessons are incorporated or brought into a child's program. For us, it's more important that the child learns the concept around a skill and why it's important to learn these things too. And our philosophy or our reasoning behind what I just said is, if a child understands why he or she needs to learn something, and if we keep it interest-based, it's going to make a lot more sense to them. So it would make sense for them to have to learn a concept. And definitely, if we're going to incorporate interest-based activities, they won't even realize that they're busy working or learning. Now, just to clarify that a little bit, because I can imagine that perhaps some of you are thinking, yeah, sure, my child is 3 or 4 or 5 years old, or doesn't matter how old, and they don't care what concept or idea or lesson they have to learn, and even if they know they have to learn it, they're still not going to want to. So fair enough, that is also a reality. And our approach, considering that as well, is if we teach through interest-based activities, ideally our child or our client that we're working with should not even know that they're working. So that is the idea. Yes, we will get to the point of teaching them how to self-regulate, how to include some of these concepts, coping skills, self-regulation skills independently, because that is ultimately our goal with all our clients, to be as independent as possible. We don't want them to have to be reliant on someone else for everything or as much as possible. So that is what we're working towards, but you need to take into consideration where your child is at right now. And if it's not relevant or appropriate to try and teach them the reason for learning certain concepts now, that's absolutely fine. But then even more so, it's going to be very important to teach through interest-based activities so that it makes sense for our kids and so that they want to learn and want to be part of it. So here is an example. Jimmy loves cars. He's 5 years old and doesn't like to color in. If we teach him to work on his fine motor skills, let's take Jimmy. He's 5 years old and his teacher wants him to work on his coloring in skills. Okay, he's not very good at coloring in at the moment. It's messy, it's untidy. He needs to improve his coloring in skills. So now, typically what many programs or therapeutic modalities would do is to obviously focus on the coloring in, because that's what needs to be improved. In an AIMS way, the way we would look at this is to look at Jimmy. Jimmy loves cars, he's 5 years old, and he doesn't like coloring in because he's not very good at it. So it makes sense that he's not going to like it much. If we teach him to work on his fine motor skills, so developing his fine motor skills within interest-based activities, because that's going to help him to be involved and to want to participate and take part in the activity. So we're not going to color in, but we're going to create, as it says in the example, create a car out of little boxes and sticking on milk bottle caps for wheels or painting the car. Doing a fun activity, you're definitely going to include many different fine motor skills. So you're going to strengthen his hands and finger muscles. You're going to work on developing those fine motor skills, but you're doing it in an interest-based manner. Because we're working on the development of fine motor skills in any case, in that scenario, his coloring in skills will improve as well, because it's also fine motor skills that that's part of the coloring in activity. So just because, as in this example, Jimmy's not very good at coloring in and it needs to be improved, that does not mean we're going to do coloring in for 3 hours a day. But we're going to find other interest-based activities so that we can develop the concept, the fine motor skills in this scenario. The idea behind learning through concepts and interests is that if a child is struggling with a skill, they will most probably not enjoy practicing this in a way that they don't like or understand. Like Jimmy, he doesn't like coloring in, he's not very good at it, he's not going to enjoy practicing that over and over and over again. If you've got a child's motivation going, if they want to be part of it, they're part of this exploring of an activity, you're going to be working on skills without them even realizing. And you've got that positive attitude from them already, which is such a good foundation for starting any learning or development.